Today's video is not about the fact that I use a scooter in my own house, though I think it's pretty cool. It's about this guy, Aleister Crowley. He was a magician, an occultist, a bit of a controversial figure. I think that's because he did a lot of drugs, magic, and part of that was sex magic, which isn't just a bunch of orgies. It is the harnessing of sexual energy and how it relates to life force and the manifestation of our will. So he was also one of the first people to bring yoga to the West, or to, one of the first Westerners to really talk about this. So some of the terms he uses might be a little bit outdated or something like that, but he was around in the late 19th, early 20th century, so we're going to cut him a little bit of slack because he was a really brilliant guy. Really prolific author. This is one of my favorite books by him. And I recently found out that it's all public domain because he died over 70 years ago. So that means I can just read straight from his work and it's no problem. So we're just going to jump right in. I hope you enjoy this as much as I have. The first proposition, the type of all propositions, is S is P. I promise this isn't a university lecture. There must be two things, different things, whose relation forms knowledge. Yoga is first of all the union of the subject and the object of consciousness, of the seer with the thing seen. Now, there's nothing strange or wonderful about all this. The study of the principles of yoga is very useful to the average man, if only to make him think about the nature of the world as he supposes that he knows it. Let us consider a piece of cheese. We say that this has certain qualities: shape, structure, color, solidity, weight, taste, smell, consistency, and the rest. But investigation has shown that this is all illusory. Where are these qualities? Not in the cheese, for different observers give quite different accounts of it. Not in ourselves, for we do not perceive them in the absence of the cheese. All material things, all impressions, are phantoms. In reality, the cheese is nothing but a series of electric charges. Even the most fundamental quality of all, mass, has been found not to exist. The same is true of the matter in our brains, which is partly responsible for these perceptions. What, then, are these qualities of which we are all so sure? They would not exist without our brains. They would not exist without the cheese. They are the results of the union, that is to say, of the yoga of the seer and the thing seen, of subject and object in consciousness, as the philosophical phrase goes. They have no material existence. They are only names given to the ecstatic results of this particular form of yoga. I think that nothing can be more helpful to the student of yoga than to get the above proposition firmly established in his subconscious mind. About 9/10 of the trouble in understanding the subject is all this ballyhoo about yoga being mysterious and oriental. The principles of yoga and the spiritual results of yoga are demonstrated in every conscious and unconscious happening. This is that which is written in the book of the law. Love is the law, love under will. For love is the instinct to unite and the act of uniting. But this cannot be done indiscriminately. It must be done under will, that is, in accordance with the nature of the particular units concerned. Hydrogen has no love for hydrogen. It is not the nature or the true will of hydrogen to seek to unite with a molecule of its own kind. Add hydrogen to hydrogen, nothing happens to its quality. It is only its quantity that changes. It rather seeks to enlarge its experience of its possibilities by union with atoms of opposite character, such as oxygen. With this it combines with an explosion of light, heat, and sound to form water. The result is entirely different from either of the component elements, and has another kind of true will, such as to unite, with similar disengagement of light and heat, with potassium, while the resulting caustic potash has in its turn a totally new series of qualities, with still another true will of its own, that is, to unite explosively with acids, and so on. It may seem to some of you that these explanations have rather knocked the bottom out of yoga, that I have reduced it to the category of common things. That was my object. There's no sense in being frightened of yoga, awed by yoga, muddled and mystified by yoga, or enthusiastic over yoga. If we are to make any progress in its study, we need clear heads and the impersonal scientific attitude. It is especially important not to bedevil ourselves with Oriental jargon. We may have to use a few Sanskrit words, but that is only because they have no English equivalents, and any attempt to translate them burdens us with the connotations of the existing English words which we employ. However, these words are very few, and if the definitions which I propose to give you are carefully studied, they should present no difficulty. Having now understood that yoga is the essence of all phenomena whatsoever, we may ask what is the special meaning of the word in respect of our proposed investigation, since the process and the results are familiar to every one of us, so familiar indeed that there is actually nothing else at all of which we have any knowledge. It is knowledge. What is it we are going to study, and why should we study it? The answer is very simple. All this yoga that we know and practice, this yoga that produced these ecstatic results that we call phenomena, includes among its spiritual emanations a good deal of unpleasantness. The more we study this universe produced by our yoga, the more we collect and synthesize our experience, the nearer we get to a perception of what the Buddha declared to be characteristic of all component things: sorrow, change, and absence of any permanent principle. We constantly approach his enunciation of the first two noble truths, as he called them. Everything is sorrow, and the cause of sorrow is desire. By the word desire, he meant exactly what is meant by love in the Book of the Law, which I quoted a few moments ago. Desire is the need of every unit to extend its experience by combining with its opposite. It is easy enough to construct the whole series of arguments which led up to the first noble truth. Every operation of love is the satisfaction of a bitter hunger, but the appetite only grows fiercer by satisfaction, so that we can say with the preacher, "He that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow." The root of all this sorrow is in the sense of insufficiency, the need to unite. To lose oneself in the beloved object is the manifest proof of this fact. And it is clear also that the satisfaction produces only a temporary relief, because the process expands indefinitely. The thirst increases with the drinking. The only complete satisfaction conceivable would be the yoga of the atom with the entire universe. This fact is easily perceived, and has been constantly expressed in the mystical philosophies of the West. The only goal is union with God. Of course, we only use the word God because we have been brought up in superstition, and the higher philosophers, both in the East and the West, have preferred to speak of union with the all or the absolute. More superstitions! Very well then, there is no difficulty at all, since every thought in our being, every cell in our bodies, every electron and proton of our atoms is nothing but yoga and the result of yoga. All we have to do to obtain emancipation, satisfaction, and everything we want is to perform this universal and inevitable operation upon the Absolute itself. Some of the more sophisticated members of my audience may possibly be thinking that there's a catch in it somewhere. They are perfectly right. The snag is simply this: every element of which we are composed is indeed constantly occupied in the satisfaction of its particular needs by its own particular yoga. But for that very reason, it is completely obsessed by its own function, which it must naturally consider as the be-all and end-all of its existence. For instance, if you take a glass tube, open at both ends, and put it over a bee on the window panel, it will continue beating against the window to the point of exhaustion and death, instead of escaping through the tube. We must not confuse the necessary automatic functioning of any of our elements with the true will, which is the proper orbit of any star. A human being only acts as a unit at all because of countless generations of training. Evolutionary processes have set up a higher order of yogic action by which we have managed to subordinate what we consider particular interests to what we consider the general welfare. We are communities, and our well-being depends upon the wisdom of our councils and the discipline with which their decisions are enforced. The more complicated we are, the higher we are in the scale of evolution, the more complex and difficult is the task of legislation and of maintaining order. In highly civilized communities like our own, loud laughter, the individual is constantly being attacked by conflicting interests and necessities. His individuality is constantly being assailed by the impact of other people, and in a very large number of cases, he is unable to stand up to the strain. Schizophrenia, which is a lovely word and may or may not be found in your dictionary, is an exceedingly common complaint. It means the splitting up of the mind. In extreme cases, we get the phenomena of multiple personality. Jekyll and Hyde, only more so. At the best, when a man says I, he refers only to a transitory phenomenon. His I changes as he utters the word. But, philosophy apart, it is rarer and rarer to find a man with a mind of his own and a will of his own, even in this modified sense. I want you, therefore, to see the nature of the obstacles to union with the Absolute. For one thing, the yoga which we constantly practice has not invariable results. There is a question of attention, of investigation, of reflexion, reflexion. If anyone knows what that means, feel free to let me know. I propose to deal in a future instruction with the modifications of our perception thus caused, for they are of great importance to our science of yoga. For example, the classical case of the two men lost in a thick wood at night. One says to the other, "That dog barking is not a grasshopper, it is the creaking of a cart." Or again, he thought he saw a banker's clerk descending from a bus. He looked again and saw it was a hippopotamus. Everyone who has done any scientific investigation knows, painfully, how every observation must be corrected again and again. The need of yoga is so bitter that it blinds us. We are constantly tempted to see and hear what we want to see and hear. It is therefore incumbent upon us, if we wish to make the universal and final yoga with the Absolute, to master every element of our being, to protect it against all civil and external war, to intensify every faculty to the utmost, to train ourselves in knowledge and power to the utmost, so that at the proper moment we may be in perfect condition to fling ourselves up into the furnace of ecstasy which flames from the abyss of annihilation. Love is law, love under will. So yeah, a bit of a tall order, but really fascinating. And he actually goes on to spend multiple months sort of perfecting one position. And it's a very different kind of yoga than, hatha yoga that we practice, in studios and gyms and stuff. Which I'll also make a video of that because I recently obtained my 200-hour yoga teacher training. And hopefully that will be helpful to some people. I hope you found that interesting. And I'll probably be posting the following chapters in the coming weeks. Thank you for your time.